now for more on that is Dr. Raywat Deonandan. He's an epidemiologist at the University of Ottawa, and he joins us here on Global News Radio. Doctor, nice to have you back on the show.
Thank you so much.
Okay, the province, as I mentioned, will pause the relaxation of restrictions. And I guess that left a lot of people wondering, Doctor, like, what's left? Is there anything that hasn't been open? Like, what does this mean exactly? Do you know?
It's a good question. It's the first question. I think what they mean is lifting the plans to raise the number of people allowed per gathering. So right now, what is it, 50 per wedding or something like that, and 10 per dinner? I think the plan was to raise that to maybe 20 and 100 or something like that. So now that's on hold, which is a good thing. It should be on hold. I think we're in a dangerous time right now, and now is not the time to allow or encourage greater socialization.
Well, is it even enough with 149 new cases today? And as I mentioned, near 400 the past 2 days, 48 hours, is just, kind of backing off or pausing that relaxation of restrictions enough, or do we need to do more?
I think we might have to do more. Look at BC. They were actually taking a further step of going backwards and closing some things. So right now, we're in a dangerous time, as I said. The numbers are climbing. People are going back to work. The schools are opening, which is really dangerous. And the weather is getting bad, so people are going back inside. Add to that, cold and flu season is on its way, and we're in for a chaotic time the next few weeks and months. So it's not only should we be putting a stop to certain opening plans, maybe reconsider the things we've already opened up.
Yeah, you mentioned BC. They're going to reimpose restrictions, just not put a pause on relaxing them, but they're actually closing nightclubs and banquet halls. That makes good sense, you think, from a medical standpoint?
It really does. And I mean, it pains me to say that because I like nightclubs and bars and restaurants too. But this disease has this ridiculous and dangerous tendency to just explode out of nowhere if people are the least bit non-vigilant. And so far, we've proven that we cannot be trusted with this freedom, at least not to the extent that we need to be. So until the school opening is secured and we know where we are with that situation, I think it's best to do our best to dial down the number of cases in our community. Remember, the most easiest and the most powerful way to keep students and families safe during the school reopening is to keep the community caseload as low as possible. That probably means closing down the bars and nightclubs.
Okay, and what about schools? Back to school yesterday for a lot of the province. It's a bit of a staggered start. The Toronto board, I think it's September 15th is the first date. We were talking last hour with the representative of the Teachers Federation. There was one school in Mississauga, Doctor, that teachers walked out because it was an unsafe environment. They felt not enough PPE. Are these real concerns that we need to be taking seriously, that we're hearing from teachers, students, parents, and back to school in general?
Well, certainly a perception can be reality. So if you feel safe, you won't be safe. We've done everything that we can. We could have done more, let's be honest. We could have done more. We could have invested in smaller class sizes and better ventilation, etc. We haven't. So we have what we have to work with. Keep in mind that right now the incidence rate is pretty low compared to other parts of the world, so it's as safe as it's going to be. I like to think of this as a four-tiered plan. The first tier is you keep it out of the community, as I mentioned. But if it gets into the community, you keep it out of the school. Then if it gets into the school, you keep it from spreading in the school. If it's spreading in the school, you keep it from getting out of the school back into the community. So even though we might not have had all the tools we need to prevent the spread within the school and to prevent the getting from the school, from the community into the school, we can still do our part to keep it out of the community. Which is why everyone has to understand that everyone's got a role to play. Even if you don't have kids, you've got a role to play by wearing your mask, doing the distancing, and not going to those parties. I sound like a broken record, but people need to hear that their responsibilities have not diminished. They've actually increased.
Yeah, we're talking about nightclubs being closed down again in BC. Meanwhile, in Ontario, we also found out yesterday that casinos are going to be reopening. And I wanted to get your take on that. And I don't mean to be flip about this, but doesn't it seem like life is enough of a gamble already?
Yeah, I mean, casinos can be made safer than other things like nightclubs, because in casinos, people tend not to go there to meet other people. You go there to sit alone and play your slot machine, or to sit with three other people and play cards. So some games can be closed off, like, the things that require intimate gathering. Large poker tables should be closed down, but a blackjack table with plexiglass barriers could be useful. Slot machines can be made safe. But yeah, if I had my way, these things would be closed for the time being until we get a sense of where we stand, because we're right now a little uncertain about what the trajectory is for the disease across the province.
Do you think with another 149 new cases in the province reported today, and by the way, we have, despite the fact the case count is down a little, it's still the same infection rate. Do you think that we are in a second wave already?
Well, this wave terminology isn't a scientific terminology. We tend to think of this as one big wave rolling across the world, and to the extent that it resembles a wave locally, that has to do with human behavior again. So we knew that we'd see an uptick of cases. Whether that uptick is of a rate and a speed that is similar to what we saw back in February and March is yet to be seen. If that's the case, then yeah, we have this thing that most people would call a second wave. I don't think we're there yet. Let's wait and see. Now, I'm fond of saying that even though this increase in cases is almost inevitable, given the challenges that we have, what isn't inevitable is that it has to be disruptive. So again, if we really take seriously the public health measures, this increase, the second wave, as it were, doesn't have to be so large that it disrupts our lives.
Joined by Dr. Raywat Deonandan at the University of Ottawa. Doctor, also wanted to ask you this afternoon about what was considered to be the most promising COVID vaccine, this Oxford vaccine, called that because researchers are working under the University of Oxford. It's now been put on pause after a participant got what they're calling an unexplained illness. What do we know about this?
So randomized controlled trials are frequently put on pause when an adverse event is detected, especially one that is unexplained. So one person on the trial, I think, has transverse myelitis, which is an inflammation of the spinal cord, which is a fairly serious condition. So you pause it to investigate whether as a result of the vaccine. They might have been in the control group. We don't know. They might have had a coincidence. We don't know. So we give them time to figure that out before they continue the trial. So this is not a reason to panic. It's just a reason to really be confident that they're taking the appropriate precautions to make sure their safety is good. I think we should be confident from that. And I hope the anti-vaxxer movement doesn't run with this by saying, the vaccine causes transverse myelitis. There is no evidence for that just yet.
Yeah, so is this a setback or is it too early to tell?
It's way too early to tell. As I said, pauses are very common in randomized controlled trials. So let's just wait and see what the investigation unfolds. I suspect they'll restart the trial in a couple of weeks, if not before then.
Okay, so will that push back any chance of it, seeing the light of day, being approved by the end of the year, early next year? Does that push all of these dates further into the future?
A little bit. So it'll push it exactly the amount of time it takes to do the investigation. I'll be a weeks. Might now, unlikely, but it might. But again, I take confidence from this. It tells me that the drug companies running these trials are serious about maintaining people's safety and aren't cutting any corners. So we should all, feel good about that.
Absolutely. Dr. Raywat Deonandan, Doctor, appreciate the time as always. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.